one.
The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
There's something here. Hi everyone, welcome to Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here, and I'm very happy to be joined this evening by Nick Kluppert. He is the Emergency Services Manager with the American Red Cross Northeast Region, which is located right here in the fine city of Oshkosh. So, welcome.
Well, thank you.
It's nice to have you here. We were just talking before we started about the folks from the Red Cross chapter here who have been on in the past. You were not one of them, and that's because you're fairly new. You've only been there, you said, what, about a year?
Yep, about a year. I was with the Red Cross for 3 years in Madison at the Badger chapter before coming here. And I'm originally from this area, so it was kind of nice that this position opened up where I could kind of move a little bit closer to home.
Yeah, coming home. And Thomas Wolfe says you can't go home again, but you're proof that you can. So.
Right.
All right, well, we want to talk about, summer is coming up, and with summer comes, people out on motorcycles and boats, and people tend to have, I think, a lot more accidents when the weather is nice. There's also storms that pop up, whether it be just really bad thunderstorms, windstorms, tornadoes, of course. We're in tornado season, if you will, right now.
Yep.
So we want to focus on emergency preparedness primarily tonight. And then if we have some time, we'll talk about some of the other things that you guys are doing with the Red Cross. But emergency preparedness, there was a study that was, a survey that was done recently, and I guess this was commissioned by the, the governor's office, I think. In any event, they asked a number of different questions. And I'm just going to run through these questions so folks know what we're talking about. In the past 30 days, have you seen or heard any messages that encourage people to take steps to be prepared for emergency situations in your community? Do you know how to find the emergency broadcast channel on the radio? Does your local government have an emergency or disaster plan for your community? In the last year, have you prepared or resupplied a disaster supply kit with emergency supplies like water, food, and medicine that is kept in a designated place in your home? Have you prepared or resupplied a small kit with emergency supplies that you would keep in your car or where you work to take with you if you had to leave quickly? Have you made or updated a specific plan for how your family would communicate in an emergency situation if you got separated? Have you established or updated a specific meeting place to reunite in the event you or your family cannot return home or are evacuated? Have you practiced or drilled on what to do in an emergency at home? Have you volunteered to help prepare for or respond to a major emergency? And have you taken first aid training such as CPR in the past 5 years? And the answers to these questions that were given were rather astounding, especially as they relate to senior citizens, correct?
Yeah, I mean, overall, it was a nice survey that was done by the state of Wisconsin to really kind of give us a good picture of how prepared we are throughout the state. And it even broke it out by region. And within our region, it showed about 20% of us are really prepared for an emergency or a disaster.
Okay.
So we got some work to do.
Yeah,
and
20% is
and
not very good.
And a lot of the steps to preparedness are really easy, and it's things that people maybe just don't think of when there isn't a disaster. And we get a lot of people that just think it won't happen to them too. So
Now, are there, I mean, obviously there are some challenges in the event of a disaster that are the same for all of us, no matter our age, no matter our mobility issues, no matter what kind of structure we live in. But when it does come to senior citizens, Nick, there are some special challenges that they face. Can we just touch on those a little bit, and then maybe we can move into the more broader aspect of things?
Yeah, with seniors in particular, it's important that a lot of the same steps are in place, but they might have different needs than other individuals that they need to take into consideration to prepare for an emergency. And so we just encourage people, and seniors especially, to sit down and just think, what are the things that you need to get by from day to day? And those are the things that you should include in your emergency preparedness kit, your disaster plan, so you are prepared to handle a disaster situation.
Okay, one thing I'm just thinking of offhand is a lot of people, as they age, the medications that they're on, for example, increase.
Yep.
Now, how can you, and the reason I'm asking this is because in the event of an emergency, if those tornado sirens go off, you don't have a great deal of time to be gathering things up. You have to go.
Right.
And so medications, for example, how do you keep something like that? Because obviously if you're going to be displaced from your home for any length of time, longer than a day, you're going to need those meds.
Exactly.
How do you keep some of those or all of those in an emergency preparedness kit and yet have them somewhere else in your home so you don't have to go disrupting that kit every day?
Right. Well, we encourage people, for medications in particular, if you have medications that you need on a day-to-day basis, having an extra supply of those, at least a week supply that you can store in your disaster kit, and then obviously rotating those out, because hopefully you never need to use your disaster kit, but we want you to have it on hand just in case. And having that disaster kit in a place where you're going to go if there's a tornado, storing it in that location so it's there for you when you get to that spot, and it's there for you to take when you can leave.
And you mentioned it's really easy to put these kits together, and sometimes it's just a matter of really kind of thinking through your day, in your mind, going through your day. I know I do something even, someone might think this is a little anal retentive on my part, but when there is a tornado, you're told to go to the lower level of your home. Well, we've got dogs. It's difficult, or it would be, if there's a tornado that hits the house, to hold on to 3 dogs' collars.
Exactly.
So I keep extra leashes right by the steps so that if those sirens have to go off, we can just grab those leashes as we're all heading downstairs, and we put them right on the leashes. It's easier to hold on to 3 leashes than it is 3 dogs' collars, especially if something truly does hit the house.
Right.
And it's just little things like that, and keeping extra dog bowls down. And I know a lot of elderly people do have pets for companionship and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's important, if you have pets, they need to be prepared too. And so having a plan, having a kit, even for your pets, because they're going to need food, they're going to need water, they're going to have a lot of the same needs that we as humans are going to need. So having that separate disaster kit, or having those extra supplies in your own disaster kit, is something that people would want to consider as well. And then in terms of a disaster, if you're not able to stay home, the Red Cross, we can't accept pets into our shelters.
I'm sorry, you can or you can't?
We cannot.
Cannot, okay.
And that's a public health, risk, and if people are allergic or pets get agitated because, they've been through a disaster, and we don't want anybody to get injured. So having a plan for your pets where, there's a kennel that you can identify that you could take your animal to, or friends or other family that could take care of your animal while you deal with a disaster situation.
See, I understand those concerns, but I really think that needs to be looked at and changed, because animals are people's family members, and when you're already uprooted because of a disaster, the last thing you want to do is have even more stress sort of heaped upon you by being separated from a member of your family, that being your pet. I know a lot of shelters, you look at Hurricane Katrina and so forth, a lot of shelters will allow pets in if they're on leashes or they're in crates, that kind of thing. You know, could there not be a place set up for people with pets, and then other people are just, you know, who don't have pets are in another area?
Yeah, with Hurricane Katrina, a lot of those issues really came to the forefront because it's just things that people didn't think about
Right,
before.
right.
And so that is definitely things that, you know, with County Emergency Management, Red Cross, other agencies that respond to disasters, is definitely something that we're looking at. You know, I don't see the rules being changed where we can allow pets into our shelters unless they're a service animal, but definitely looking at setting up sites, you know, where pets can, you know, maybe be located in one facility and their owners, you know, we can set up a shelter nearby. So it's easy access, you know, you don't have to be separated, you know, too far, but, you know, but it's a little bit more convenient than for the pet owners. You know, like the fairgrounds, you know, sites like that could serve as potential sites for shelters for pets and people.
Oh,
So,
sure, and they've got so many different buildings out there, for example, that, you know, the one building could be for people with pets, and they
Right.
could stay there right with them, and that, so, yeah, that's a good idea. Well, let's talk, are there any other things, Nick, that are specifically related to or can present challenges for senior citizens?
Well, with seniors, you know, it's important to make connections, you know, with your neighbors, family, friends, that, you know, they know what your needs are, you know, that you're checking up on one another so you know that you're okay. You know, having that support network in place. Because if there's a disaster and, you know, if your neighbor can check on you to make sure you're okay or can help support you and get you to wherever people need to be evacuated to, that's something to consider as well for seniors.
Okay. Well, so let's talk about the, and I know you brought a kit with you.
Yes.
Let's
Should we
talk
take a look
about,
at it?
sure, let's just dive right in and let's take a look
Okay.
at what should be in an emergency preparedness
Yeah.
kit.
Well, this is a Red Cross kit that you can actually purchase from the Red Cross if you wanted to. This is really just a starter kit with some basic items that you would want to start with. But like we said, everybody's needs are going to be different. So you're going to have to look and see what you might want to add to this. So within the kit, it's just in a handy backpack here. Since we have our grant right now with the Lady Benevolent Society, we're actually giving away some of these kits to seniors in the Oshkosh area.
Okay.
If they come to some of our presentations and learn more about how they can be better prepared. And they'll also get this Disaster Preparedness for Seniors by Seniors booklet
Okay.
that was developed by seniors.
Okay, let's move the bag aside, or if
okay.
you want to hold that up, I'm not
Yeah.
sure, but
Then some other things that we have in the disaster kit, you know, just a first aid kit would be something that you'd want to include. So if you get some injury that you can, you know, bandage up yourself or have help with somebody else, that would be something that you'd want to include. We also have a container that you can include up to 3 gallons of water in.
Okay.
It's encouraged that people have 3 gallons of water per day per person in their disaster kit. So your disaster kit, the larger your family is, you know, your kit's going to be a little bit bigger. We also have, you know, some water packets here. You could also include bottled water in your disaster kit, but this would be something you would want to rotate out. It's just kind of like those drink pouches that you would get for, you know, kids.
Okay.
So that would be something you could include. We also have, this is just an AM/FM radio with batteries, just a small radio inside
that is
there.
small. Wow,
Yeah.
look at that.
So this would be something so you could keep up to date with what's going on. If the, you know, if you're stuck in your basement after a tornado, just to see, you know, what the situation is at hand. Let's see if we can get it out of here. So yeah, it's just a tiny radio with an
Look at
antenna
that. That's
you
adorable.
can, you know what the weather situation is and things like that.
Now, is it just an AM radio, or
AM/FM.
this is AM/FM, and then I see that there's a TV band on here too, although with the recent change to digital, that
Yeah.
TV band may not work.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And now, can they get like a weather channel on here at all?
Yes,
Okay.
that would be a weather radio as well.
Oh, wow. That's
And-
really
and
very
then
good.
always have that set of batteries, and don't put them in your electronics if they're in your kit, because you're probably not going to be using this all the time, so your batteries can still drain. So keeping that separate. You can also get the hand crank radios, which I have in my disaster kit at home, so that can be handy, and you don't have to worry about the batteries as much then. We have, a dust mask if you needed to utilize that. Some work gloves. If you're trapped in your basement and you have to get out and move some things or break some things out of the way, you might want to have a pair of these so you don't injure yourself. We have, just a rain poncho. If we have a flooding situation, we want to be prepared for all types of disasters. So, we think of tornadoes a lot, but we might have flooding situations, as we just had a few years ago here in Oshkosh.
Oh, that was terrible. Yeah.
This is just an emergency blanket. Doesn't look big, but it's a thermal.
I don't know if we're zooming in on this or not, but I think we should be zooming in on these things.
Yeah, this is just an emergency blanket, a thermal blanket that will keep you warm.
Okay.
This is actually a energy snack, food bars for you.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd want to eat these every day, but if you didn't want to have these in your disaster kit, like for myself, I have granola bars, applesauce. You might want to include peanut butter, some high, protein, high energy type foods, that are non-perishable. And again, same thing with water. Every time you change your batteries, I would change out your food and water in your disaster kit. Okay. Just kind of check on your disaster kit, see maybe you have other needs that develop since you've put your disaster kit together, and you might want to include different things in there. Duct tape is always an important thing to have around that can fix everything, right? So we want to have our duct tape in there. Our disaster kits also include some light sticks, so you can grab people's attention if you need to. Another thing you might want to include would be a whistle, which I have in my disaster kit at home. So if you're trapped in your basement or somewhere in your home after a tornado and emergency workers are looking for you, hopefully they can hear you blowing on the whistle. Another thing we want to have is a flashlight and extra batteries, because power may be out, and if it's been in the middle of the night and we just had a tornado, we don't want to be walking around on broken glass and debris where we can get other injuries, so this can be very helpful. Also, you might want to throw in a pair of sandals or old pair of shoes because a lot of times if we have a tornado, we don't grab our shoes if it's in the middle of the night.
Right.
And then if there's debris, we're getting injuries to our feet and things like that. And I think, this would actually be a whistle that you could have in there that I talked about. And I think that's pretty much, we have some more water packets in here.
Oh, there's a lot of water packets out there. Holy cow.
We have some plastic sheeting. So if we had a hazmat situation where we had a shelter in place, we could put this over any vents in our home to help protect us from that outside chemicals or harmful material in the air with our duct tape. Get that so we protect ourselves in a room without many windows. And so some more snacks here, and then some, wipes, damp wipes are always helpful to have as well.
And there was a lot of room left over in there, too, I was noticing.
Yeah, and so you could add more things right into this backpack. For seniors, you were talking about seniors, it might be hard to carry, it gets heavy if you have a lot of things in here. You could, get those backpacks that have wheels, so you can just wheel it around. Myself, I have actually a Rubbermaid container that I have all my items in.
Oh, okay.
So again, that might be something pretty heavy for some people, but you can get those Rubbermaid containers with wheels on as well. So there's always options. We don't want, you can store your disaster kit any way that you want to, and we just want people, a lot of these things are around your home already.
Yeah.
And so it's just gathering them in one place. Most people have a flashlight, most people have a lot of these different things, and just putting them together in one location so they're there when you need them.
Okay, good. Now, so they can assemble their own kit, or they can actually buy one of these. And if they buy it, then Nick, all this stuff comes in the kit.
Yep.
Okay. This many bars, like okay.
All this stuff comes right with that kit. So.
All right. And what does that go for?
This is about $45.
Okay.
And there are a couple different size kits too, depending on what people's needs are. But I built my own kit, and a lot of the things, it's just really cheap to gather the things you have around your home. And if this is something where maybe some people can't afford to go out and purchase all these things at once, just maybe one thing a month, and by the end of the year, your kit is pretty much complete. So it kind of isn't such a huge impact on some people's budgets that might not have enough money to go out and buy all that at once.
Now, you were saying, or maybe I was imagining this, I don't know. I thought I heard you say something about a pet emergency preparedness kit.
Yeah, yes. I don't have a pet right now. I've had a pet in the past, but for presentations that I've done, I've actually developed a pet disaster kit, where you can include food, extra water or feeding dish, some newspaper, a toy for your pet. A lot of the same things. They're going to need food, they're going to need water, all those things.
Perhaps their own medications if they're on something?
Exactly. And we actually have pet first aid kits as well, too,
Okay.
that you might want to include in your disaster kit.
And so what do those go for, the first aid kit and the preparedness kit?
First aid kits they range. There's different sizes depending on what you need. So they may range anywhere between $8 and $25.
Okay.
So.
All right. And is there a place on your website where it has maybe a checklist of the various things that people might want to consider putting into a kit if they want to
Yes.
kind of build their own?
Yeah, actually, if you go to our National Red Cross website, redcross.org,
Okay.
and you actually, redcross.org/Be Red Cross Ready will get you to our Be Red Cross Ready site. And there's actually, you can put in how many people are in your family, and a few other pieces of information, and it'll actually create a shopping list for you of what you should include in your kit.
So that was redcross.org/Red Cross Be Ready?
Be Red Cross Ready.
Oh, Be Red Cross. Be Red Cross Ready. Okay. All right. That's good to know. So, and does it have the checklists for the, I know I keep asking about pets, but this is a concern, for those of us who do have pets. Is there a checklist there for the pet preparedness kits as well?
Yeah, off the main webpage, there is a link for preparedness, and there are tear sheets and things like that, and it includes information for pets as well on there. So
Okay.
there's some different information that you can download off the
Okay.
website.
So redcross.org/Be Red Cross Ready.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And B is BE, not just the initial B.
Right.
Or the letter B.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What else should people be aware of? I know one of the things we brought up was, making a plan.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was 17 years old, that was when a tornado actually came through Oshkosh. That was in 1974. Now, see, I've given you, if you want to do the math, you'll know how old I am. But we were all in different places when that tornado hit. Everyone else was gone. I was the only one home, and I had just left to go to work 3 minutes before the tornado hit the house. And, we kind of stayed in different places for the next few days. We didn't have kits like this. I don't know if it wasn't really talked about much back then, or if we just didn't have the need for it because we were with friends or relatives or what have you. But you just never know when something's going to happen. And just about the time that you say, it won't happen to me, it will.
Exactly.
Or it certainly could.
And a lot of this is thought of after the fact, and then it's too late. So, we want to be prepared before it happens.
Yeah. And, in our case, we, of course, each knew where each other was. None of us was home when it happened, so it's not like there was all this commotion at the
Right.
time when it hit the house. But if there is, whether it be through fire or tornado or what have you, you have to have a plan. They always say have a meeting place.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. And you hit the nail right on the head when you talked about, you might be at work, maybe somebody's at school, you're running errands, you're separated when the disaster hits, maybe it's a tornado, maybe it's a flood, and, how do you get in contact with another? How do you get back to meet up? There might be a lot of commotion going on in the neighborhood. So it's important to have a meeting place and, a place where you know where to go and reconnect. Also having a contact out of the area that is likely not affected by the same disaster that you can call up and, say, I'm at such and such a place and you can reconnect that way. It's even better if you can have an out-of-state contact, because those long-distance phone calls are going to go through a little bit easier than some of those local calls when everybody's trying to get a hold of one another. So,
Sure.
so definitely having those out-of-area contacts where maybe it's grandma that lives in New Jersey or whoever that can kind of gather that information and let everybody know where everyone is and try to get everybody reconnected. Another resource that the Red Cross has that I think isn't talked about enough is our Safe and Well website. If people are, lose contact because of a disaster or an emergency, you can go and register on there. It's linked right off of our website. And so if you're in a shelter or if you're anywhere, you just go online, find a place where you can get online, or contact the Red Cross and we can register you for you. And people then have to know specific information like an address or something like that to find out if you've actually registered on that site.
And that's something that they can get to through your website?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, redcross.org is the Safe and Well website.
Okay.
So.
I just thought of something else people might want to keep in their emergency preparedness kit, and that would be a backup charger for your cell phone.
Oh yeah.
Cell
Definitely.
phones are about the only way that a lot of people communicate these days. They don't have landline phones.
Right.
But even if you do, if there's a tornado that hits, chances are your landline phone may not work anyway.
Yeah.
You may not even be able to find your landline phone.
Exactly.
If it's
Yep.
too bad. But these cell phones, the batteries can drain pretty quickly. And certainly if you have to be away from home for any length of time, more than a day or so, chances are that battery is going to be dead. So
Yeah,
having a backup charger would be probably a good idea.
Yeah, that would be a great idea to include if you can get an extra charger to include in there. So.
See, I'm always thinking. I'm always thinking. What else do you think that people should know? Obviously, having a CPR background.
Yeah, our last step is to be informed. Our 3 Be Red Cross Ready steps: get a kit, make a plan, be informed, and knowing how to save a life. If you come across a car accident or somebody just collapses, wherever you're at, being able to help that individual that needs help, and knowing the proper technique and skills to be able to do that. So we offer CPR and first aid classes all the time. There's community classes that we have set up at our office here in Oshkosh, and we offer them throughout the community as well. So just to contact us to take a CPR first aid class together is $55. And your CPR is good for 1 year, and then first aid certification is good for 3 years. So.
Okay. And do you still offer pet first aid classes?
We do,
See?
actually. So,
I
yep.
actually took one of those a
Yep.
few years back.
We
so
have the
probably
pet-
longer than a few
Yeah,
years.
we have the pet mannequins that you practice on, and
Oh, they didn't have those when
they
I took
didn't.
it. No.
You'll have to take it again and try it out.
See, you're trying to spend my money already. How often do you give these classes, Nick?
Our CPR and first aid classes are offered pretty much weekly.
Okay.
So there's a lot of opportunity for people to take classes. There's weekend classes, evening
Okay.
classes. So if you have a business and you want to get your employees trained, we can even come to your business or other organizations to offer training right on site.
Okay. How often, I think we can probably, those of us who have been here, for the last year or so, we can probably tell how often we've had disasters here. The last one was, probably the flood of 2008. And prior to that, I'm not exactly sure when the last one would have been before that. But, how often, and that's just in Oshkosh, but you serve a greater region than just
Right.
Oshkosh. So how often do disasters happen in our area?
Well, Red Cross nationally responds to disasters every 7 seconds.
Wow.
And a majority of those are single-family home fires. 90% of the disasters we respond to every year are home fires. And just this past Memorial Day weekend, throughout our area, we had 3 families that were impacted by fires. There was 1 duplex and a single-family home as well. So it was a busy Memorial Day weekend for
Yeah.
some of our volunteers, but we're here to serve people whenever they need help. And otherwise, locally within our region that we serve, there's about 20 counties in our area. We have about every 2 days we respond to a disaster, and again, most of those are fires. Obviously, the floods, the tornadoes are, the big disasters that make all the news and the attention.
They're the ones that impact the most people, but
right.
you are right, you make a good point. A disaster can strike one family.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, having, your preparedness plan, your kit, knowing what to do ahead of time, can save lives.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned about, your volunteers and so forth who are there kind of at the ready to help out when something does strike, whether it be a large area and many, many people in an area, or just one family, in a single family home fire or something like that. What kind of training do these folks have to go through to be able to help out?
Yeah. All of our training for our volunteers is free, so there's no cost for our volunteers, but there's lots of training that our volunteers take place in. If they're interested in certain types of activities within the Red Cross, they can kind of follow a certain set of classes, I guess. So if we have sheltering classes, we have feeding classes, if we're doing feeding in our community, we do damage assessment. We work with our government partners, so we have training on how to, be a government liaison and do a good job at that. So there's a lot of training that our volunteers take, but we have dedicated volunteers. We're always looking for more volunteers to help us out, because it's so important if we have a large disaster that we're ready to respond. And so many people want to help right when the disaster happens, but if they even have just a little bit of training ahead of time, it makes the response go so much smoother. And we'd love to have more people volunteer with our local chapter.
Oh, well, that's good. So if you're interested in, helping out and, helping make a difference in people's lives, they should just contact your office then.
Exactly. And our volunteers are always, saying how rewarding it is to be able to help somebody out when, they might be at their lowest moment in their life because they might have just lost everything, and being able to help them just that little bit to get them back on their feet is really rewarding.
I know that when this email was sent over to me, she had mentioned, she being Barbara, she said that if this runs before July 22nd, which of course it is, she wanted me to mention the Disaster Preparedness for Seniors session.
Yes.
And she also mentioned that someone might win a free disaster kit.
Yeah, we have.
But now you had, so I guess let's talk about a couple of things in our last remaining moments here. You said that you're giving some of those away.
Yes.
Right now during this time period?
Well, we're doing some different presentations throughout the community. We're approaching different groups. This is targeting the senior population with the grant that we had. That's kind of the parameters we have to fit in. So that presentation on the 22nd of July at 1 p.m. is going to be at the Oshkosh Senior Center.
Okay.
And so, you're welcome to come, and we have a limited number of kits that we'll have there, because we'll have some at other presentations as well. So, a number of people will get a disaster kit if they attend, and we'll talk more about some of these preparedness steps specific to seniors as well as in general, and how we can prepare for some of those different types of emergencies that could happen in our area.
Okay, and so that's coming up on July 22nd at the Senior Center at 1 o'clock. And about how long does it go, Nick?
It'll be about between a half hour and an hour.
Oh, so by 2 o'clock,
So,
2:30, they'll be on their way.
Yeah.
Hopefully with disaster kit in hand.
Exactly, yeah,
right?
and being better prepared.
All right, and you guys offer other types of training classes too. Besides the first aid and the I was going to say VCR, but it has truly been a long day. Besides the CPR and the first aid and first aid for pets, you guys also do babysitter training, yes?
Yes. If you're 11 years old, you can take babysitting training, and so you're better prepared to deal with emergencies or situations that you might encounter if you are a babysitter. So, especially
and then
in
you're
younger-
certified?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can then put that on your posters if you're advertising your small babysitting business, and so people know that you're better prepared to handle emergencies with young children.
Okay. So that's good for parents to know if they're watching and they've maybe got a child of that age that is looking at maybe getting their first babysitting job.
Yep.
How often do you offer those?
Those are offered quite frequently as well. There's usually 1 or 2 a month that we offer. So
Oh,
you just
okay.
call our office, and they have classes set up a few months out, so you can schedule
Okay.
schedule one.
Let's get the contact information. Of course, the website is redcross.org. Now, do you all have, for the chapter here, do you have your own website, or
We do.
can they get to it right from this
Yep,
website?
we have a regional website, newredcross.org
Okay.
for Northeast Wisconsin region. So newredcross.org, and that will also link you to the national page if you want to go there as well. So we do have information about local events and local news through the Red Cross listed on our local website as
Okay.
well.
And the local office is in the Tower West building. It's on Washburn Street, and my printer cut off the address. What is it?
It's 515 South Washburn Street.
515 South Washburn Street, Suite 201, and the phone number is 231-3590. 231-3590. So a lot of good stuff that you guys do. I mean, we could have probably talked for another hour or two
Yeah.
on everything that you guys have to offer. But certainly, you know, they should take a look at these kits and
Yeah.
seriously consider putting them together.
And if you want us to come out and do a presentation for your business, your local, organization or group that you're in, we'd be happy to set that up as well.
Well, that's a good idea, because businesses should probably have a plan in place too.
Yeah, and we'll have, we can do lunch sessions or anything like that.
Do you
so.
provide lunch?
No. Well, you could have some of the
Some of these
bars.
wafers. All right. Well, Nick, thanks so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to have you guys on.
Well, thank you very much.
And you've been a real joy, and I look forward to having you back again. Okay. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by local author Ron LaPoint. We'll be right back. Okay, we've got.
Dear Mom and Dad, well, I finally have some time off, so I'm writing to tell you that I'm doing well. We have good days and bad days over here. We try to remember the good ones and get through the bad ones. Mostly we have each other, and that's what keeps us going. And Mom, since you asked, if anyone wants to help, just tell them to contact the USO. You can't believe how much they do for us. With love, your son, Michael.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. The Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
We were in an emergency situation. We don't have extra. We have a little bit of water and a little bit of food. A meeting place, no.
No.
I don't think we have a first aid kit.
We have tuna fish, we have
Right.
beans, we have canned tomatoes,
True.
you know.
That's true, but that's really not survival food. Tomato paste.
Yeah, well, yeah, right?
And welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. And now we are joined by local author Ron LaPoint. Ron's been here in the past, and he's always talking about his latest book, and you have yet a third book. In the past, your first two books were A Family History, and the second one was Oshkosh, A South Side Remembers. And now you've written and published, and I don't know if we can maybe zoom in on this right here, but you have published The Way We Were, Remembering People and Places
In Oshkosh.
in Oshkosh. Now where can folks get this book, Ron?
Well, you can get it at 3 bookstores here in town. Paper Tiger, Apple Blossom, and I just put some books at Basic
Okay.
Bookstore too. The museum has a lot of them, the Senior Center, And there's a coffee shop in North Main, not Blue Moon, but about 2 doors down.
Okay.
Forgot the name of it. Deb is the manager, so they have a few books too.
Is there a copy in the library by chance or no?
You know, I haven't checked yet, but I think they bought 3 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So people can always just
That's
go
what they
and-
did the last time.
and
So
check one out.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little about this book. You know, it's the thing that I enjoy about your books, and we've had you on for 2 of these, is, you know, they're easy reads.
Good.
You know, in that they're very short. I mean, if somebody doesn't have a lot of time to sit down and read a book, they can sit down and they can read, you know, a few sections. This book
Sure.
has over
story
100.
at a time.
Yep. And you know, it's like, this is it. You don't even have to get too much of a close up, but this is the extent of one of the stories. It's about a page and a half. You know, they're not all this short. Some are maybe 4 pages or whatever, but most of them are,
Right.
you know, pretty short like that. I mean, here's another example. You know, they're just kind of short. We've got 2 stories right here. So let's talk about the book. You've got a lot of contributors to this book, as you've had in the past. How many contributors do you have to this book? 90, right?
There's over 90. I think there's about 60, 61 or 62 authors that actually authored stories, but maybe another 30 that in some way contributed, sending photographs, calling me on the telephone, emailing me, sending me letters. They understood that I was doing a book, and they became interested in some of the stories, especially Donnie White's story.
I remember Donnie, not real well because I was very, very young.
Yeah.
But I certainly remember my folks talking about him,
Yeah.
and he used to push me around in a stroller and a baby carriage. And now that I don't remember, but I was told.
Well, I wanted to write a story on Donnie White, so someone had tried to actually write a book on him before, but I didn't have enough information to justify me writing a story. So what I did was I sent some letters to, I knew where Donnie grew up, 18th, 19th Street, so I sent a few letters to people that I knew grew up in the same neighborhood, and hoped that they would help me uncover some information. Anyway, one of them told me to get in touch with Donnie's sister, Jeannie Rasmussen. So I did, and I called her and told her what I wanted to do, and Jeannie said, well, the first thing you should do is write a letter to the editor of the Northwestern and ask for people who knew Donnie to call you or write you, because she said if half the people who gave speeches or said nice things about Donnie at his funeral, you're going to have more than enough for a good story. And that's what I did, and I got a dozen or 15 emails, letters, that kind of stuff. And I had fun writing the story. It's a rending and a heartwarming story at the same time. What a guy. I borrowed the title of the story, The Mayor of South Park, from Larry Muir, who was the person who was going to write a book about him, but never got around to it. So anyway, I had fun doing that story, and fun doing a lot of stories. I wrote about 13 or 14 of the stories, many of them interviews. One of the interviews I had that is worth noting, I was sent up by 2 former Oshkosh Giant baseball players to call Dave Garcia, the former manager of the Oshkosh Giants in the late 40s and early 50s. He lives in San Diego now, and he's 89 or 90 years old. So I called him and introduced myself and said a few nice things about him that I picked up from people around here. And I actually had my watch on the desk and timed the telephone call. It was 1 hour and 10 minutes, and I talked maybe 3 or 4, and I'm trying to jot down everything, hoping I got everything right. But he's still a talker, just very congenial, quite a guy. And at the end of the story, I put down his address and telephone number, In the event any of the old timers in Oshkosh who knew him wanted to call him, and I got a call about a week ago from Ruth Dino, whose husband wrote some stories in the book. And
Don? Yeah.
Ruth, and Don died, last August or September. And she called Dave. She wanted me to know. And she talked for a half an hour or so. Dave knew Ruth because Ruth used to date one of Dave's catchers by the name of Wilbur Jenkins. I remember him in 1949. And so they were together socially with a few of the Giants, including Dave and his wife Carmen. And at the end of the conversation, Dave said, "Ruth, you made my day." So I made a presentation yesterday to a group of 1956 graduates from Oshkosh High School. And I told them about the interview and that the telephone number was at the end of the story. And many people there remembered Dave real well. Some went to every game and knew his wife Carmen. And so I also encouraged them to call too. So I've been in a lot of nice people writing the book.
Yes. How do you decide, and this obviously, your love for our history in Oshkosh comes out of your former career. You're a retired high school history professor, or teacher. I'm giving you this professional designation here, Ron.
I only have a master's.
You're a retired history teacher in the local high school. And so this is a natural progression for you to want to do this kind of writing. How do you decide, though? Because our history here in Oshkosh is just so rich, and for people who aren't from here, I think it's hard for them to really have the same kind of appreciation, obviously, as those of us who are natives of Oshkosh have. But so much history, and how do you decide what you're going to put in a book and what you're going to leave out? That's got to be a tough part of your job, huh?
Yeah, it was. I had to leave out a few of the stories. They didn't come in very fast at the beginning, but near the end, they came in like a flood of letters and stories, and of course I had to edit every one, and I wanted to keep the book down to 250, 275 pages, because if you go over 300, the cost of the book goes up, and the price too. So I did eliminate about 3 or 4. How did I select those people and those stories? Well, I was down at Senior Center one day last summer or the summer before, and a guy down there said, after he had read my book, and he said, "Why don't you do another book?" I said, "Oh, well, I don't think I have another book in me, on Oshkosh." He said, "Why don't you do a book, sort of a collected works of interested Oshkosh residents and former residents? I'm sure a lot of people have stories to tell and would be eager to do that." I said, "Well, it's a thought," and the more I thought about it, I decided, well, maybe I'll try that. And who do I write to for stories? That's a good question. I came up with a number of names and wrote a letter to each one of them and told them what I was doing, and I mentioned that they led interesting lives and would have an interesting story to tell, and some of them did submit a story soon after. Many of them didn't. So I sent additional letters out to other people I knew. I grew up in Oshkosh, so I knew quite a few people. And those that didn't send in stories from the first letter, I sent them another letter and got more specific as to what story I thought they could tell and maybe should tell. And I got a lot of responses from that. And then they came over a course of 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 months. I got over 100 stories.
Wow.
well over 100, and I limited to I think 100 or 101, and they range from interviewing what I call local celebrities, interesting people, to fishing way back at the turn of the century, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, this particular book focuses mostly on things from the 40s and 50s.
yes,
A few things went beyond that, you know, they're
Yes.
more recent than that, but primarily it's on the 40s and 50s. And there's quite a laundry list of things that are included here. And I'm just going to give kind of a brief synopsis. So this only scratches the surface. It covers things like corner taverns and grocery stores, churches, self-contained neighborhoods, local sports and sports heroes, movie theaters, the polio epidemic, which was fascinating, boating, fishing, Friday night fish fries, old-fashioned ice houses, other unique stories about Sawdust City, when we were known as Sawdust City, and expansions of the YMCA and public library, among others. You know, where do you get all these ideas, or do these ideas come from
other people.
other people?
Well,
Okay.
most from the other people. Sometimes I suggest storylines. I'm trying to think of his name right now. The former city manager, Free.
Bill Free.
Bill Free. I wrote to him thinking that he had a lot of stories to tell, and he did. He responded almost right away, and he said, "What about if I tell the story of the library expansion in the early '90s, 1991, 92, whenever it was?" I said, "That's fine." He said, "It's an inside story, and I might be bumping up against some people that may not want their names or suggested, or that he would suggest their names in the story." I said, "Well, write it and I'll take care of it." And so he said he didn't want to be sued or anything. So I edited the story, didn't have much to edit. And I sent it back to him. I said, "Is this all right, Bill?" He said, "It looks good to me." It's an interesting story, what he had to do to get the expansion of the library.
Do you want to share that with people?
Well, it's sort of a long story. There were a number of people who cooperated and a number of people who didn't on the city council. And then there was a local minister that, for reasons of his own, wanted to veto the library expansion through one of the local councilors because of the Playboy magazine. It gets very involved. And so Bill had to try to resolve that, and he finally did, I think, to his satisfaction and satisfaction of counselors. But I guess you have to read the story because it does get very involved. Yeah. And of course, Inky Youngworth, I knew he had stories, many stories that he already wrote. And I thought he might have some ones that he didn't write, so he contributed 3 of them.
Sure.
One on hobos in town, one on Sawdust City with the Payne Lumber Company, and the other one right now escapes me. It'll come. The polio epidemic was an interesting story. I wrote to 4 people that I knew had polio in the 50s or before, and 2 responded. Milo Miller, who was the first Oshkosh person to contact polio in 1939. He wrote an interesting story. And Ron Cook from Omro, who was about 70, wrote a good story too. I learned through a little research that in 1955, Oshkosh and the Fox Valley had the highest incident per population of polio in the country.
Wow.
And, they didn't know what caused it at first. They thought it might be fleas, mosquitoes, flies, things like that. But they finally traced it to the sewage department. So that was interesting. Excuse me. A lot of them, other ones too, but the most interesting to me was the one on the orphan train. You heard of the orphan train in the late 1800s? Where orphans and incorrigibles and people who were, kids were abandoned by their parents, were transported from basically New York City to the Midwest, hoping to find a good home for them. It was the first documented foster care in America, and many of them worked out. Some didn't. Billy the Kid was a orphan on the orphan train. What the story I wrote was about Oshkosh. I didn't know that 50 orphans from that orphan train coming from the East Coast were dropped in Oshkosh. And 4 of them were taken in by the pastor at St. Mary's Church and his housekeeper back around the turn of the century. And when he died, the housekeeper got the 4 children and raised them. And because of that situation with the priest and the housekeeper having 4 children, many people in the congregation not knowing from where they came, there was a lot of gossip in church.
I bet there was.
And that kind of a thing. So I didn't know that either about the orphan train in Oshkosh.
One of the stories, I mean, there are so many in here that I enjoyed, and I have to finish the book yet too, but you know, one of the stories that I enjoyed was on the barber shoppers.
Oh, you did?
I did, and it's because of a personal situation. My grandfather my paternal grandfather was in the barbershop quartet for years, and the barber shoppers. And even after he developed throat cancer and ultimately lost his voice box, he was still up there mouthing and
Wonderful.
And singing, you know, probably right up until the time he passed or shortly before. And so that, you know, that brought back a lot of nice memories.
Yeah, Jack Kyle and my brother Roger wrote the story. And well, they had a lot of remembrances about past times and current times, and it was a story of love, especially by Jack and my brother. Yeah, that's one of the longer stories in the book.
It was, but it, you know, like I said, it brought back memories and you know, explained some things that I didn't know anything about. But it's nice to, you know, it was nice for me to be able to relive part of my history through your words and other people's words.
Oh, good.
You know, so. Well, we're out of time, but you know, it's always nice to have you on because, you know, someday these stories, you know, the people who help make these stories, they're going to pass, and this way we've got some of these stories preserved.
That's what I'm hoping for, yes. And it's just fun writing the stories and doing the research and contacting people. I met a lot of people that either I had never met before or, you know, re-met over, based over the years. So, in fact, I met this morning Richard Melko, who's the son of Ida Melko, that owned that restaurant, Union Barbecue on Main Street.
Yep.
Owned Union Cigar, owned a drive-in years ago. And I got to read just very quickly what his grandson
Very quickly, because
said.
we're almost out of time here.
He said, Yida knew a lot about the booking business, a bit about the restaurant business, a bit about the cigar business, and a whole lot about making people laugh. And that was Yida Malco. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank
you for inviting me.
You know, the continued writings that you do, and I bet you've got another couple of books in you yet, Ron.
Well, I don't know about that.
So I'm looking forward to having you back.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that's going to do us for us. We will see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.